Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome Adam Dubin to the podcast. Adam has directed legendary music videos for the Beastie Boys, Metallica, and more. Adam has a new band called Das Moöse, and their new album, Moösehenge, is out now. Adam also has a horror movie coming out called Traction Park Massacre. A link to the movie's webpage where you can watch the trailer will be in the show notes. Adam talks about having Rick Rubin as a roommate at NYU, being in the right place to direct music videos for the Beastie Boys, his transition into directing comedy specials, starting a band, and the inspiration for Traction Park Massacre. This was a super cool chat, and I got to give a shout out to Austin at Speaker PR for hooking me up with this interview. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome. Thanks for listening. You can find links in the show notes or over at asthestorygrows.com to our podcast community on Discord. You can sign up for our mailing list, or you can support the show financially and get early access to every episode on Patreon. If you think somebody might enjoy this episode, I would love it if you shared it with them. It's the best way to grow the show. Enjoy getting to know Adam from Das Moöse.
So I'm doing this from, I'm backstage at Comic-Con and we have a presentation tomorrow, man. So it's like we're all in prep mode for our big debut of the trailer for Traction Park Massacre tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. No, it's really cool.
That's super rad. Well, thanks for hanging out, taking time to.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking time too. It's like, this is really cool. It's just like a lot of things happening, but like tomorrow it's like a big day. Like it's first day of New York Comic-Con, and we're like so proud to be a part of it. And the one of the songs on the record is part of the horror movie. So anyway, I'll tell you all about it. I'll give you the whole deal.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, it's also a big day because today's album release day. So let me start with that.
Yes.
What led to a Wednesday release day?
For that, I don't know. I had help with putting this out, and the guys at Syndicate, and somebody hooked that up. I can't take credit for it. No, can't take discredit for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not me. That's that's out of my ballpark. Man.
Yeah, it almost doesn't matter like these days, right? With streaming, it's kind of maybe it stands out more. It's like
I was gonna say maybe it's better. Like I'm not with everybody else. Who knows?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's cool. Did you?
We're out. That's what matters. We're out.
Yeah.
Finally.
Did you? Are you originally from New York?
Yeah. If you couldn't tell by my lovely accent, I'm from Brooklyn originally. Then Long Island for a while, and then New York City, and back to Brooklyn, and whatever. Been a bunch of places all over in life, but I'm a New York dude, New York filmmaker dude. Yeah,
nice. So you've seen the evolution of New York from less than ideal to
well, when I lived there,
is happening now, right?
Yeah, I lived there in Brooklyn in like the early and mid '70s, and it was not hipster cool back then. There was nothing or cool about it. And there's areas I drive past now that are like veneered over and beautiful, and I kind of still remember those streets, and I'm like, man, you would not have been hanging around back then, so it's like anything, things get gentrified, life changes, and I was happy when it got cool again. I was like, man, I want to go back to Brooklyn. I was like I loved it there. So it was like, and but one of the reasons was, I was a filmmaker already, but I was kind of like, I had a young family, and I wanted to, and there's a thing about it, especially at that time in like 2009 and 10, everywhere you walk, somebody's walking with like a guitar on their back or something, some instrument, And I was like, man, if you can't form a band here, then you got no chance, It's like, everybody's playing. So I thought it was cool.
Yeah, that's cool. What got you into music?
I don't know. I mean, it's not that my parents were especially musical; they weren't players, but it bit me really, really quickly. And I listened to all kinds of things, but at some point it would be like around the mid '70s. A couple things hit, and they hit hard, and it was like a kind of music that just it worked for me in a way that like pop music did and everything. I heard like Kiss Alive, just was like that whole idea that from the album cover itself to just the music and then seeing them, and then like Led Zeppelin, and just this idea of the riff and the power of that and everything. And it just gradually became heavier and heavier as time went on. But I think there's something else, which at the time I didn't realize, but it became formative, which was in a re-release, I saw the Woodstock movie. So probably like in the maybe 77, I don't know. It was just in a re-release. And that movie, it still hits hard now. I mean, it's film, so it'll last forever. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like the power of film. Jimi Hendrix is going to be young and he's going to be with us forever. So it's like, that's an amazing thing. So I just was kind of like at the time I didn't know it, but around that time I also discovered a movie camera. And it's not like I put these two things together like and film. I just started making films, and somebody else probably would have picked up a guitar from that. I didn't yet. I just was like, the story aspect got to me, so I started making these films, and then I got a sound. The Super 8 thing, so I could make sound movies, and I kept doing it. And at some point, and then the interesting thing is when I went to college, when I walked into the dorm at NYU, there was two things. One, MTV was maybe 1 year old at that time, so it was still like literally affecting the landscape. You know what I mean? Everything, the entire music business was now being affected by MTV, by the power of that as a selling vehicle. You could play a song by an English pop group that like a few people in England knew, and suddenly like in the middle of America, they're going like, yo, I got to have that record, And the other thing was my roommate who I walked in on, who I, again, complete happenstance of history. And my first year roommate was Rick Rubin, or, is Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
One of the greatest producers of, whatever,
That's fucking wild.
Yeah. So it's like, it was kind of like, oh, wow. But again, he was certainly a interesting character and quite a force even then, but he was not the guru that he is now. You know what I mean? He was just a 19-year-old guy who was very passionate about music and other things as well. You know what I mean? And just kind of, he knew who he was and was very, he just had this attitude of like, I'm going to go out and do this stuff. And it was like, I didn't, I was kind of like, okay, I just kind of get along, and he just knew what he wanted to do, and he was interested in a certain type of music, and he wasn't just interested, but he wanted you to be interested, and he wanted to tell you why. So he was a bit of a teacher and stuff, to do this stuff, and I thought it was incredible. So I was like, great, I'm here to learn, because all I knew was FM classic rock radio. Yeah. From Long Island, which was fine. I mean, you got all the basics there, you know what I mean? You got all your groups and everything. But very quickly in New York of like 1982, 83, and then 84 and 85 and everything, I quickly left behind conventional radio and just started getting into everything that was going on over there, So it was pretty easy to do.
It's the explosion of punk and hardcore and just music in general. Hip hop. It's huge. Yeah. Did you feel like, I mean, when you're in college, you have to pick a lane, whether to pursue music or pursue filmmaking, or?
But I was not a music student. I didn't play yet. And so my lane was very clearly, especially with the advent of MTV, it's hard for people maybe now and younger people to know, but the release of a music video on MTV was like an event. You know what I mean? They would be telling you for like a week in advance and, whatever date. And nobody had it in the room, but in the dorm, there was like a TV in the lobby that everybody could watch, and people would gather around. They were like, oh, a new video, especially like Michael Jackson, who like his videos were like almost like film events. And so, and they were interesting. So people would gather and watch them, and then you'd see them. And so I I just thought it was the greatest time to be doing this, that like suddenly there's, record companies are paying for guys like me to make music videos. Like they made a film and you could do this. Because prior to that, the film business, there wasn't a lot of ways in. You could make a short film and maybe people would see the short film and that was like your calling card to say, hey, I could do a feature, you know what I mean? Because there's not like a short film industry. But suddenly there's this thing, music video, and the record company will pay you to make a short film for their artist, and you could say, hey, I've done this music video. So it was kind of a cool time to be working, and doing that stuff. It was like still happening. And then, amazingly for me, it actually happened at a certain moment.
Yeah, it kind of blew up. You get to do the Beastie Boys. How'd you get connected working on those videos?
Well, that was very clearly Rubin's influence.
Yeah.
So we only roomed for 1 year, but we stayed friends for the rest of his time at college. And then afterward, I interned for, it's weird to watch because you don't think of it like as happening. Like when something's happening in slow motion, you don't sort of see it as much. But like at some point, like this little record company, which he showed me a record the first day I ever met him that was like, it said Def Jam on it, but it was a punk record, not a record that anybody would ever care about. But when he started making hip hop records, suddenly it blew up very quickly, and that's because he got with Russell Simmons, and so suddenly it's a thing. So I was like, oh great, you needed to intern as part of like your credits for the year. And I was like, great, I'll just go work for Rick because I know him and it's easy, and so I was suddenly running around and, it's funny, the Beastie Boys, the three guys that we know, were just part of a larger clan of these young guys. They were younger than us, so by a few years, and they were like running around New York, and you go to any hardcore show, you'd see them there. You went to any hip hop show, they were like, they were like these street kids that like bopped around. You'd see them on St. Mark's Place and they were running around, and you would not have picked any of them. Like you wouldn't have said, oh, these three guys, they're going to be famous. There's no question. No way. And if you ever saw their hardcore bands, you would think absolutely there's no way these guys.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, what the hell is this? But they started doing like a spoof of rap, which was Cookie Puss, which was fun. They loved it. Yeah. And then Rick started working with them. So I started to get, more friendly and conversant with them. I wouldn't say I was like good friends or anything, but we were certainly, we'd see each other all the time and say hi and talk and whatever, and Adam Yauk was certainly his own guy, you know what I mean? He was like, you understood, like this guy, they were smart kids. So they had a vision for themselves. Now, so when I was first seeing them, they were probably like 16 maybe, and 17 and 18, and, they was just starting to get out of high school, and they wanted to succeed, and they quickly switched. It was just working for them. If hardcore was working, I'm sure they would have stuck with it, but it wasn't. But hip hop was, and that I think is owed, a lot to Rick, but also a lot to Russell Simmons, who knew how to take a group and make them happen. So, and they were good, and they followed it. So, on and on. Rick Rubin he was directing his first feature, which was the Run DMC movie, Tougher Than Leather. And I think were he not busy with that, he probably would have directed Fight for Your Right to Party, but he was busy with that. He was up to his eyes busy with it. And so it fell to like the song was breaking out all over the place. They'd released the single, not the album yet. And it started to like just go crazy in different like areas that they played on the radio. So one day these MTV guys came up to the set of the movie and they were like telling Rubin that like, you have to release a music video for that song in the next 2 weeks. And they said, they said, we're holding a spot in heavy rotation, which was like, there's people who would like sell their mother to get that. Like, that was like the golden ticket. And they were like, okay, if we have a video in 2 weeks, we'll run it. Otherwise, we're going to give that slot to like the next guy that's coming along. So he was just like, what do I do? So he turned to Rick Manello, who was my great friend and co-director. Rick Manello was 10 years older than us and had been an NYU film student then. He also co-wrote the movie with Rubin and was actually in the movie with him. And he was like, Rubin's like, you got to direct this. You know what I mean? And he's like, Manello's like, okay. But Manello had never directed before and he was scared. And at that time, I was scared of nothing. I was like, I'd been waiting for this. So I was just like, I'll do it. And as Manello always said, and he's passed on now, but he said he had me along because This way, if it didn't work out, he'd have me to blame it on. So, so I was like, okay, whatever. But, we took off with the Beastie Boys. They just wanted to get their video on air, and they worked hard on it and came up with ideas, and we came up with this thing and shot it over Thanksgiving weekend in 1986. Just barely made it, it was like a little money, shot it in a loft in New York, and put it together, and whatever. 2 weeks later, it's on air, and within the following week, it's already like the Beastie Boys. It's it caught on.
That's
so awesome. That was great. And then they were like, well, now you got to do the next one. Like right away. It was like No Sleep in Brooklyn. You got to start working on that. Okay. It's like great.
That's awesome. How do you make that jump from music videos into, I see you've directed a bunch of comedy specials. How do you make that jump?
Yeah. Because I never saw any difference in directing. I mean, there's people who specialize, to be sure, but I really always wanted to do like narrative feature. That's what I thought I'd be doing. But I really, as my kind of abilities grew and my mind grew, I could see that sort of everything, documentary is a narrative feature in its way. There's a narrative. A comedy special has an arc and a story arc and a narrative to it. If you would just have to listen to the words, and it's also very musical. I've always found that the in comedy, as you know, it's timing. It has beat. It goes like this. It's just like music. It goes 1 and 2 and 3 and punchline, and then it's 1 and 2 and punch. And I could always hear it. It made sense to me. Especially when I work with Lewis Black. Lewis Black's he's got a great musical background. And I just always heard him as like a rhythm. Do you know what I mean? He was like a rhythm to him. And he just went 1 and 2, and then he'd hit the punchline. I was like, oh, I got this. This is like filming a band, really, So, and it's one guy. So I was like, I knew how to angle my cameras and kind of where to cut so that you get the maximum out of that punchline. So it was really kind of cool. So I guess just being open to whatever came, but also going towards artists I wanted to work with. I mean, Lewis was a guy that I spotted really early, and my wife works in comedy, and she booked Bonnaroo for 14 years, the comedy shows there, and so we go there. But I knew Lewis even before that, and Lewis was just became very quickly and easily one of my favorite comedians, and also one of my favorite people to hang out. Very smart and sharp guy and nice, unlike his stage persona, very nice guy. Pure stage persona. And he was fun, you know what I mean? Seeing Lewis was fun. So it was like that was a happenstance. He at a certain point he needed a director, and I needed to work with somebody like that. So I was like, let's work together. And he liked me, and sort of the Beastie Boys were. I knew them, and they liked me, and so I was like, yeah, that's great,
That's awesome.
So, it was fun. So I just looked at it all as I can do any of this. I can do any part of this, you know what I mean? And just go to the next thing and do the next one. So, it's just you just keep an open mind, I guess, and then just do it.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's the music also. I just played guitar a little bit and kept on playing. And at a certain point, I just was like, all right, I could play this a bit. And then I had another band that I was part of a bunch of years ago now with it's called The Stoned, and Corey Clark from Warrior Soul was in that band, and he formed it. And at that point, I was just I was just a player. I was like, I'll play guitar in there, and I was just good enough. I'm not real good, but I was just good enough for that. But we were good enough to go play right away. I was like, we got to go play CBGB's before it closes, so we got that in, and then I made some music videos. And it was fun until it just everybody went different directions. I was like, okay, that was good. And then whatever, I had kids, and life takes a hand. But out of having kids, I kind of was like, all these guys were there, and I was like, oh, let me form up, let me get these guys to do a band, because we're all dads. We all got stuff, everybody wants to play, but nobody's pulling this together. So I was like, I'm always the let me pull it together kind of guy. So I was just like, okay, come on, and so all these people came together, and I found each guy who was ready to play, and we just did it. And it's interesting in Das Moose how quickly we graduated away from doing songs that were like covers and everything to writing material, you know what I mean? Writing songs. Yeah. And so we just like started creating. I guess it's organic if it all just happens, if it just seems to flow, you know? And so, you know, at a certain point I said, let's go in the recording studio and record some stuff. And we were like, okay. You know? And we did. We had a nice time doing it. So that's how the album came about. But it was anything but a fast process. And we just kind of went as we felt it, you know?
Yeah. What was the inspiration for the band name?
Yeah. We have I mean, again, that went round and round, as you well know. Band names can be like a real, you know, that could be sometimes a knockdown fight, but it's certainly a difficult. Somebody always doesn't like something. So finally, I was just like, you know, we had something coming up where we were going to play, and I was like, we need something, and we have a little dog, a little poodle-like dog. And the dog is named Moose. And so I said, all right, let's just name it Moose. But Moose is kind of boring. And I said, well, if it's Das Moose, if it's German, I'm not German, I don't have anything, but then we can have umlauts. And if we can have umlauts, it's heavy. So umlauts is the whole reason. Nobody in the band's German, but we were like, well, it's heavier with umlauts. So Das Moose, and off we go. We got this good logo we created, and you know, off to the races, man. That's what we do. And so it caused a lot of fun. We then started to have in the summer a music festival with our kids and everything. And so it was like we did Moose Stock, and then we did Moösehenge, and then we did Burning Moose, and then we did Moöse. And finally I was like, Moösehenge is such a good name. I got to do that for the album. So and I had the idea for the cover art. So that's what it was all about.
What's your vision or hope for the band? Are you just happy to have these songs and have them recorded, or is your hope to get up there and play some shows and just like rock New York?
Yeah, I think that's it. You know, I mean, you know, other than world domination, you know, which can wait. You know, the fun thing was, I said this, it was like I started playing with the guys, and we're all like, you know, of a certain age, you know, in the middle, and we all have the binding factor. We all like each other, of course, but we all have kids the same age. They're all like now 14. So I kind of said to them, I said, it's kind of interesting when you're playing music and like you're not worried about getting famous. You're not worried about making money, because those things are not really on the table. Yeah. Now you're in just to have fun. Are you having fun playing music? And if the answer is yes, then go play music, you know, and that's really it. So we just kind of went and proceeded, and we started rocking out at this local club, and people were digging, and we were getting more people than the headliner and everything. So we just kept doing it, and we just kept writing songs. So I guess, you know, now some other things are coming our way. We're going to, in December 7th, we're playing in Brooklyn, but opening for Warrior Soul, our good friends with Corey Clark. And it's great. I mean, we're sort of we just go where it's fun to play. We don't have an agenda about it. And so, you know, whatever. I mean, it'd be wild to see how far this can go. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't think there's an opening slot for Metallica anywhere in the future, but I do think that we could certainly just go out and just keep playing, and as long as we're having fun and everybody's doing it, then great. You know?
Yeah. But if Metallica calls, you know, you'll pick up the phone.
What can I say? I know somebody, but you know, it's not gonna happen. It's you know, it's just, you know, the great thing about rock and roll is it's so all encompassing and so forgiving. I mean, if you just get up in a club on a Friday night and play, you know, basically play your heart out and have a good time, everybody will have a good time. And for 30 minutes, you contributed to the greatness of rock and roll, and everybody enjoyed themselves. And my feeling is that the world would be a far better place if more people just played rock and roll and played guitar, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So do your part, you know?
Yeah. I know you got another interview coming up, but talk to me about Traction Park Massacre and this movie you got coming out.
Yes. Okay, so the movie is, all right, so filmmaker first, right? And me and my best friend, the guy I was making like Super 8 movies with 40 years ago, Douglas DeMonda, we were like kind of just said it. We said let's make a movie. And if you're going to make an indie movie, a great space to be in is horror, because horror it's very familiar to me, because a lot of the heavy metal stuff that I'm involved with, those fans are horror fans. It's like the same gang, you know what I mean? So I just was like, well, a horror movie, the best thing about it is it doesn't really require stars. Do you know what I mean? It's like people will go to it because it's a horror movie. You can put stars in there, but they will see it because it's horror. They're interested because it's horror. And I was just like, let's do something. So we came up with this idea, and people on the East Coast know this more, but there was a amusement park called Action Park that's very notorious because there was a documentary about it. And me and Doug had gone there literally 40 plus years ago now, and we went with 4 friends, and we each got hurt in different ways. So it definitely has a reputation of like getting hurt. And I just thought like that would be a great area, like a great venue to have a slasher, to do an old school slasher film in. So that's kind of what it is. It's like Traction Park Massacre, and the title kind of tells you what it is. And we and then we just kind of pulled people together and made it and everything. And our friend Alex Skolnick is going to do the score. He's doing it right now. In fact, there's a teaser out that has the score. The trailer comes out tomorrow. Because of this panel at New York Comic Con here. The panel's being hosted by Fangoria Magazine. So we're kind of on our way with that. But the film is fun. And then I said, we'd already made most of the songs on the Moöse album, but I was like, man, I want a Ramones song for my movie. You know what I mean? Like, the Ramones are, like the way they did Pet Sematary. Remember that? And it's so cool. And I was just like, man, that's great. Well, we don't have the money. We're not going to license a Ramones song. And they're unfortunately not with us anymore to make a Ramones song. So I was like, let's just make a Ramones type song. And that's what we kind of did. And we just finished the music video for it. And it's very, it's fun, and it's filled with the right vibe. We shot the main part of the video at the Lucky 13. They were very kind to give us their space. And it's all filled with shots from the movie and kind of us playing and everything. So it's like, it's Ramones-esque in a way, you know what I mean? And with that feel and good humor that they brought to so much of what they did. Well, I mean, I saw the Ramones the first time in 1983, and in a way I never got over it. I mean, it just blew me away, and still to this day, it just is like, if you're going to see a rock and roll band, something in a club, see something like that, you know what I mean? And there's great bands now. I'm not knocking anybody now. I'm just saying that for me at that time, I was 19. I was like, man, that's doing something. That's what a club band ought to be, It's just amazing.